Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and everyone in between, I am OverHugs, and I'd like to welcome you back to Building Bread. Thanks for choosing to join me on the adventure today. Today, we are going to build one of our default farms that will provide a great deal of resources that we desperately need much easier than we can otherwise gather them. This is a general mob farm. And a general mob farm will produce creepers, skeletons, spiders, an occasional witch, and all those have drops that are quite useful for us. And so what we're going to do is, because at this point in the series, we don't want to invest a great deal of effort in both mob proofing and worrying about ultimate efficiency. We just need these resources in order to produce other farms that will be better. We're going to build it here in the ocean. The positive thing about the ocean is because generally the water goes pretty far down if we go and crash into it. This is all stuff we don't have to mob proof, which is fantastic. And we can set it up so that it's a nice even spot where we can build it fairly low down on the ground, but to gain some of the efficiencies, but not have to worry too much about clearing a perimeter or anything like that. So this looks like a pretty good space. It's 128 blocks or more away from land, so we don't have to worry about it. It's still pretty deep. As we go down here, we end up going to the 40s, and in some places even lower than that. Like right here, we're at 45, and this is pretty good. I think we'll build it right here. So you see that sea level is 62. We have to, when we cross up out of it, we're at 62. And so what we're going to do is we're going to build a farm here, starting with the collection system. Oh, hello, Drowned. I assume you don't want to be friends, because you never do. I keep trying. Maybe someday. So what we want to do is we want to build the farm starting here. And we're going to build it from the bottom up. And so, as with all farms, the best way to show that is in a time lapse. Just keep swimming. Just keep swimming. Okay, and here we are with our newly completed general mob farm. And you can definitely see this is pretty productive. We get a decent amount of mobs, even though it is the middle of the day. And there's a number of features here in this farm that we have not covered before. And because of that, I'm going to go through quite a few of them. As with all of our videos, if there's something you're not particularly interested in, I put time markers so that you can skip to a different section if you want to. I realize that not everyone is going to have the passion for the Minecraft mechanics that I do. And to that, I want you to be able to define your own experience and get to the point where you can consume content and enjoy it however you want to. So there's a couple of new mechanics in here that we haven't seen before, and I'm going to talk through these and go through some examples. First off, this roof in itself. We haven't really talked about spawn mechanics and how it works in Minecraft, so let's take a minute to go through there. We have talked about light levels, and you know already from a previous episode that mobs can only spawn in a light level of 7 or below. And this roof ensures that that light level is the case, that it is basically pitch black in there, even though it doesn't look it because of the way that the renderer works. But we don't have to go all the way out here to get a light level of 7 or below. So why do we do that? And the reason is that Minecraft has spawning mechanics that are called pack spawns. And what that basically means is, if I can grab a couple of blocks here in order to show you. So let me just go and grab some stone, because that's a very easy way to do it with these slabs. So the way that pack spawning works in Minecraft is when there is a spawnable space, like if this had a light level of below 7, it would be a spawnable space. And Minecraft will check from the bottom of the world all the way up to the topmost block. And so basically the way that that works is, if this is a spawnable space and it is a light level 7 or below, and the game says, yes, something can spawn here, it will go ahead and spawn a monster there. There's also an additional check to see if it will spawn up to 3 more mobs of that type a number of spaces away. So what can happen is you can have a mob spawn here, and then a mob spawn here, and a mob spawn here, and a mob spawn here. And they all spawn at the same time if this is a pack. So this is beneficial to then have something like this, where you have this roof that will cause a spawn check, because out here there's nothing, it's all air. So no mobs can possibly spawn there. But because we've put this roof on, what it will mean is, say for example, this is our farm. Like, this is the outline of the farm. It's the furthest most spawnable spaces. If this is a spawnable area because the roof is above it, and there's not an area here, it'll say, okay, I could spawn something here, but there's nowhere because it's air. But it will still do the pack spawn check. So if we were over here where the spawn is, where the farm is, a monster could spawn here, a monster could spawn there. So we have increased our spawnable spots by doing this and creating this roof, in addition both for light levels and also for spawning areas. So that's why we do that. In addition, we have a new system here, which this is an item filter. And I think I'll show this and then I'll build it so that you can understand it, because it's a lot easier to get it. And basically what happens is, as you see, we have a bubble vader, which we've built before. We did this in our zombie spawner episode. And what it will do is, it's taking all the items from below, and we'll get through how that mechanic works in a minute. Bubble vaders them up, and then they grow against hoppers. And these hoppers, if you look into it, have items and filter items. These are items, the bamboo is an item that will never be gathered by this farm, so it's operating as a filter item. What you can also do is enchant this and change the name, and once you do that, it guarantees the item is unique. So even if I were to throw a stack of bamboo in here, it still wouldn't match. And you're seeing that this, as we collect gunpowder, this is going up and down and up and down, and it's always going back to 41. And the reason for that is the way that the item filter is constructed. And we do this in order to be able to easily sort multiple items that come from the farms, which I've done here with these item frames. And you can see that this chest only contains gunpowder. We have 2 different chests here because I don't ever want to miss gunpowder. Gunpowder is a very valuable item, and it's what we created the farm for, as well as bones and string and zombie flesh, and then this final one, which if you look is not have a filter applied to it, is just overflow. So if any of these were to fill up, or if they were to miss their filter, or if they're not a filtered item, for example, one of the stone bricks we just broke while we were showing the roof fell in here, and we can reclaim it. If we get a zombie riding a chicken, that shows what this is, and that's why these feathers exist, as well as the raw chicken itself. And then sometimes we just get too many items and the filter can't handle it. So since the string and zombie flesh don't have two different collectors for it, because I don't really care as much about them, they just go into this overflow. So let's take a minute and get our redstone box and build how this item filter works so that you can see it. So we're over here, and I'm going to quickly build up what this looks like in order to explain how this works. And in order to construct this item filter, we need hoppers, we need redstone torches, we need repeaters, we need comparators, redstone itself. And some of these items are new, so I'll go over them really quickly. And so basically what a comparator is that it compares blocks. Like, for example, if we have the comparator here and we have another block, like let me grab a block of redstone. When I put this down, it will read the signal from the redstone because the comparator will take an energy output. And since we have this, you can see that it's outputting a level of 15. And not everything will have a level of 15. Different things can compare, and there's so many things that you can compare. I'm not going to go totally into them, but like, for example, if I put this down, this is outputting a energy level of 2 because the shulker box is only partially full. And you'll see as I add more things to it, like its level is increasing. It's now at 3, and now it's at 4, and at 5, and so on and so forth. It will continue to increase as we go in and put more items in it until it is finally full. And when it's full, it will read the signal output of 15, which is the maximum. It goes from 0 to 15. So what else do we have here for items? We also have a repeater. And what a repeater will do is it will do two functions. One, it will extend a signal. So right now you see this energy level is 13. If I put the repeater here, we're back to 15. So it max powers any signal. The other thing that you can do is you can delay a signal from it. So for example, if I were to set this to the maximum, this is 1 tick, 2 ticks, 3 ticks, and 4 ticks, where a tick by default is 1/20th of a second in Minecraft. And I were to break this, you would see it lasts a little while. And also, if you keep your eye on this one, whenever I hit this, it takes a second before it propagates through. It will delay it that number of ticks. And this is handy for a variety of reasons, including timing or building clocks or all kinds of stuff that we'll cover in another episode. But for our functionality here today, what we want to do is we want to use it to make an item filter. And so let's create the basics of what that looks like. What we want to do is we want to start with 2 hoppers, and we want them to be slightly higher than the output that what we have today because we need a little bit of space. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pillar up and I'm going to create a hopper that is pointing into a comparator. And we want the comparator to be facing this way. And then we're going to take our hopper and we're going to shift click it on the comparator so that you see that it points into the comparator itself. And then below that, we want to have some form of output. And that's generally going to be a chest. In the case of an item filter, you can have it be a couple of different things. It can be a chest. It could be if you just wanted to collect things and destroy them, then you could handle it that way. But for right now, we want to have a chest, so we'll just build one really fast for an example here. So take our planks, go ahead, make a couple chests, and so we will have our output be a double chest. And so we want to take our hopper and we want to feed it into there. And so from here, what we need to do is we need to extend 2 out, 1 down, and 1 over. And I'll show why we do that. So what we want to do is we want to create a 3 line of redstone because we want to detect a certain power level, being the one that showed that it had 41 items. And when we hit that power level, what we want to do is we want to send it through the repeater here to disable a redstone torch that we will put here. And what is this redstone torch doing? This redstone torch is powering this block, which is turning this hopper off. So if you see, as I throw items in here, this hopper will not drain. It will sit here indefinitely with 43 items. Because the hopper is powered, it is locked. And since hoppers will naturally pull down before they go across, and there's nowhere else for this to go right now because it's facing into this comparator, this hopper is also locked. Nothing can go down. Nothing can go into here. But you'll see, if I knock out this torch, we've depowered it. And all of a sudden, the redstone dust is draining into this chest, which is great. This is exactly what we want to see. Now, how do we make this work for us? What we want to do is we want to get to the point of where this comparator is pulling enough of a signal where it will depower this torch under a specific conditional. So what we could say is, say for example, let's find something that we have enough of where we can make this work, like spruce logs. So right now this is locked. And let's say that we want to filter for spruce logs. So we'll put some, that shouldn't have worked. Okay, that's very strange. Why is that working? Okay. I don't know what just happened there. We didn't change anything, but for a second it just was draining. So yeah, that's kind of cool. So what we will do here is we will start off by putting a small amount. Okay, I realized what I did. I put too many in. The fact that I put in a full stack caused us to jump the gun and to go through and overpower to the point of where it was draining. So that's actually doing exactly what we wanted it to do. So yay. But so right now there are 32 logs in here, and I'm just going to fill it with redstone dust just to be illustrative, but not that many. So if I right click, you will see I only put one item in each one of these fields. Whereas if I go through and I left click, then it will divide the stacks among the number of item slots here, inventory slots. So that's a nice little quick way to go through and do it. So now this has 27 items, which is fewer than the 41 that we need. And you see 2, 1, and this is not powered. Because this block is not powered, the repeater is not turned on, and the torch stays the way it is. However, if I were to add a couple more, like you'll see as I split these up, I add 10, nothing happens. I add 2, nothing happens. However, the second I cross 41, we will go through, we will activate this, we will activate the repeater, and we will deactivate the torch, and it will allow items to drain through here, and you'll see we drained out 12, so this will now be 41. And that's generally how an item filter works. And there's a couple of different ways you can deal with items. You can either move them across via water, like we're doing here. You can create yourselves a hopper chain so that the hoppers continue to go across, and thus, if you don't have water, like you're in the nether or something like that, you can just migrate items through hoppers, but that will limit your entire hopper chain to only doing 9,000 items an hour total, because that's the maximum that one hopper can handle. But there are a number of ways that you can get around it via ice roads and water columns and other things that we'll cover in a future episode. But this is a basic item filter and how it works. And this is wholly tileable. As you saw up there, we tiled it across multiple entries, and you can really go as far as you want. The only thing you have to watch out for is if you get to the point of where this is overpowered. Like, for example, if I were to dump this in where it went over the maximum number of items, this becomes 4. So once this is like 4, or say, for example, I did this and whatever, you'll see now this is 5. And what will happen is that will cause it to start bleeding across to the next tile as you go. And if it does that, you'll get multiple hoppers that will start draining when they shouldn't. So that's about the only thing you have to watch out for, and that's fairly rare. Generally, that doesn't happen. So let's take this down and go and see some of the other things that are new at this farm. So just to finish up, you see that we have hopper chains back here, and we're moving things across using water. And this is by far the easier way to do it. If we got to the point of where we had a tremendous amount of items going through here, what we could do is basically create a circle of water that continuously is a closed loop and keeps feeding into the hoppers. But this farm doesn't require that. It's not that efficient. There are a number of efficiency changes that we could make on this that would maximize the yield, but since this is so early in game, we're not focusing on pure efficiency right now. But you see, this is fully tiled, and here all the power levels are 2, like we discussed, and they spike up, they go up to 1 and such as items come in. And you can see over here the redstone torches will blink on and off as items move through the system, and they unlock those specific hoppers. Also behind us, while we're waiting for these to blink, 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 okay, now we see it, so that's great. Behind us, we also have, again, an etho hopper clock. And we've kind of gone through and timed to see how many that we need in order to do this, and this is just kind of played by ear. It doesn't have to be perfectly exact. Again, we're not being perfect when it comes to the efficiency of the farm, but it's good enough. And also up here is the level of our farm. And up here is our AFK spot. And this is where we will actually stay in order to maximize the yield. Up here, we are at 190. And that's basically takes us down if you do 190 minus 128, which is the way that the radius of which mobs despawn. You will see that we don't load anything that is below the water. And this is exactly what we want. We don't want to go through and have all the caves and any drowned or anything below us. So there's nothing that is being loaded. And that causes our farm to be maximized and only load the spawnable area for the farm that we've constructed. However, why are we not at 256? Wouldn't that be even more efficient? Not really, because Minecraft starts from the bottom of the world and works its way up. And efficiencies drop the higher you get. So there's always going to be kind of a little dance between having your farms be as low as possible in the world versus having to create a perimeter versus having to go through all the caves and light everything up. Again, like I said, we're not going for maximum efficiency here. We're going for something relatively easy to build. And even at this point, relatively easy, this took me a couple of hours. This was a couple of minutes for time-lapse for you, but it was probably 5 or so hours for me to get this whole thing constructed. And lastly, what we have here is our unloading mechanism. And you can hear the arrows being shot because I don't really want them. Eagle-eye viewers would have guessed that we do collect skeletons in here. Like, if you see, maybe if we'll get lucky, since I'm on my last rocket and I'm going to have to land, but we do have skeletons that are created as part of this farm. We're creating bones and gathering them. But we're not collecting arrows because I have infinity on my bow. If you look at pew 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 here, it has infinity, which means I only need 1 arrow. So rather than this being a dropper, which what I'd normally use in the bubble vaders that would take all items and just put them into the water column to go up to the top, I've done a dispenser so that it shoots out the arrows, and we don't collect them and we never have to see them again. So let's walk through how the redstone here works. The collector down there, the minecart, is just going on powered rails, exactly like we did in our magma cube farm in a previous episode. And all that's doing is pulling through the areas there, the blocks, the magma blocks that we've created, which is what's killing all the mobs. And this pulls through those blocks, gets collected in the hopper minecart. And then what it does is it comes up here, and we have the basics of a detector system. And this is a very handy way to do it because it can detect when the minecart is full versus when it's empty. And so what happens is that signal gets put by the detector rail, goes to the comparator. The comparator then charges the block, which turns off this redstone torch, which turns on this redstone torch, which has caught by this repeater, which then goes through and deactivates the redstone torch here, which causes this gate to close. So basically, any time that the minecart has any items in it, that will cause this gate to close, and it will be held there over another hopper minecart that we have lower down. And we've done a little trick here that is definitely new to this series. And what we've done, if you look, this isn't really aligned on a block. We kind of put it so that it's going across these 2 hoppers so that it will drain twice as fast. And in draining twice as fast, we have 2 inputs that go into this dispenser. So let me take out my box and get some more rockets, and we'll actually show how that works. So let's zip up here to our AFK spot and sit here for a second. So we'll give it a second for the mobs to go through and spawn, and for a couple of cycles of the hopper clock to turn on the water, very similar to what we did for the cow farm. And that's how we wash things off of the platforms, is there is an observer and a dispenser that goes through all the way up on each level. And the hopper clock here triggers the top observer. And what that does is that triggers the dispenser below it, which the observer below it sees that dispenser go and triggers the dispenser below it. And it chains all the way down to the bottom. So the hopper clock there is the thing that is causing it to go back and forth. And you can see the line of redstone that goes to that observer face as we're looking down. And when it ticks over, that will change and that will be depowered, and the observer sees that, and that causes the buckets of water to pull back, just like we did in our cow farm. All right, so this is enough. So let's go down here pretty quickly and try and catch it and not go face first. So when this minecart comes back, it should be relatively full of items, and we'll see how fast it drains. It's very fast, because draining into a hopper minecart is extremely quick. But you see then, there will be items in here that will go into the dispenser and will be gone through. And what I've done is I've got a comparator coming out of here, which then powers the repeater, because otherwise it would be ticking on, off, on, off, on, off as items came in. And I want this to be constantly powered, which is why I put in a repeater with a 2-tick delay, 3-tick delay. And that powers the sticky piston, which puts two observers facing each other. And this creates a very quick observer clock. You can see this is flashing. So it's going back, forth, back, forth, back, forth. And every time that this goes, this powers the dispenser, which is why things exit so quickly. You can see all the items that are going through. Like if I were to do F3 and B, you can see how many items it's quickly shooting out. I think we're a little too close right now to actually be getting efficient items through the farm, but hopefully when the minecart comes back, it'll drop some off. And yeah, you can see it's just like it's shooting stuff out like mad as it's collecting. And we're not even anywhere near the ideal spot right now, so you can see how fast this farm can produce. But this is a very simple trick to get a very quick clock going. And sometimes you don't want a clock that fast. This is one of the fastest clocks that you can produce in Minecraft. I think it's like 2 or 3 ticks, and it will just continue to farm out those items. The other trick that we've done here is we have used pistons to push glass down onto this minecart in order to keep it where it is. And we're going to cut and go to another space and show you exactly how that works. Okay, we're back on our little platform here to go through quickly. And what I want to show is I'm going to take a hopper. I'm going to grab a regular rail and throw this on. And so what I need to do as well is I need to create a minecart with a hopper. And this is a very simple recipe. It's exactly what you think it was, which is why I didn't go over it. And we're going to put it on this rail. Then what we're going to do is we're going to break the rail underneath it so that the hopper is directly, the minecart is directly on the hopper. From there, we can take an item, like, for example, we'll do a piece of glass again. And what we'll do is we'll have the piece of glass on top of the hopper minecart like this. And then what we'll do is we will put a piston facing down into the glass itself. And we'll take a block of redstone and we will push it down like this. And now you can see they're in the same space. And this is super handy because what it will do is it will help protect the minecart from moving. You can basically surround it to the point of where it's not going anywhere. And you can also build on top of it. So I can put blocks directly on top of this, or like what we were doing before, I can put rails directly on top of this. And this allows me to do things like the unloading mechanism that we have over there in a very efficient manner. And now we're back on our camera account. And I'm going to use this to show off a bit more about the inner workings of the farm, without getting blown up by creepers, because not something I like. We'll stay away from death from above for at least today. And you can see how this is working. And this was the chain that I was talking about, where it starts with this observer and then goes down to a dispenser, which goes down to another observer and a dispenser, and so on and so forth all the way down. And you can see the number of platforms. And one of the things that we did was we slightly offset. we have some of the platforms that are dry and some of the platforms that are wet, and they alternate. And the reason for that is to give more spawning spaces so that we're not creating all of the spaces as being non-spawnable because they have water versus the ones every cycle. So it just gives us more spawn opportunities, and you can see the number of mobs that are getting pushed off from this. And they basically go down here, and they get caught in the extremely loud magma blocks. And let me turn the game sounds down a little bit, because that's way too loud for me to try and talk over. And so what happens here is these are the magma blocks that we needed from the magma cube farm that we created in a previous episode. And these do damage to anything that's standing on it. And so over time, these will die. And as they die, they drop their items, which are not burned as if this was normal lava. That is the advantage of using the magma blocks over the magma itself. And then it will go down and be collected by the minecart that we talked about earlier and go into the unloading system that we went through and talked about. And so you can see this is pretty productive. We have quite a few mobs down here, and we can actually see now that we're on our camera account, we had an issue with the water that I'll need to come in and fix. It's causing some mobs to be caught up on here because that looks like it's a source block that's further out than what I wanted. Actually, it looks like we have this problem all the way around, so we'll have to come down here and light it up and fix it. But still, even with that, we're still pretty efficient, and we're getting a great deal of mobs. This is producing more than enough of what we need for our single-player world. And that's fun. I like building farms that produce more items than we need. You saw we had like a third of a stack of gunpowder right there, just from one trip. And that will last us a very, very long time. So it's just enjoy it. I like making farms that create a lot more than what we need because at the end of the day, the only resource that's really limited is time. And I don't want to spend a tremendous amount of time here AFK in order to gather all the stuff that I need, especially not when we can make a farm that will just do it for us. The last thing that I'm going to do here is I'm going to sit here for a minute so you can see in the dispenser and see it loading up once it comes through here and sees the hopper minecart unloaded. So we're basically loading in 4 items so rapidly here that they can't disperse as they're coming from the different hoppers. And this is due to this hopper chain here. So hoppers by default will go down before they go across. So what happens is it will pull from that minecart. And again, this minecart here that we have that's in the glass is spread across these 2 hoppers so that they have an equal chance of pulling from. And while they're doing that, they will go down. So it is going to go down, and then it's going to go down before across. So you see that this one points into the one that is more diagonal, more that way. But it's also here. So it will go down here unless this already has an item in it, in which case it will then go across. And this is how we have things like this hopper has consuming items, and this hopper's consuming items, and the hopper over there is consuming items. And that's how we really feed it and make sure that the dispenser is going to be as full as possible to deal with this super fast hopper clock. And I think that's everything that we haven't covered before. If I've missed anything, let me know in the comments, and I'll happily explain how all it works. And for those of you that are just skipping to this point because you didn't care about the mechanics, welcome back. Glad you stuck around. And so one last look at our collection system here. I want to have lots and lots of space, and it might seem like overkill, but the good thing is this farm produces a decent amount of materials. Like as you're seeing, again, even though we're no longer on the optimal area because we're back on our main account, I like to be able to produce things so I never have to worry about it. So you see our rocket box here. We have more than enough gunpowder and more than enough rockets to last us for quite a long time. And I do like to have specific boxes in case you've seen me put them down, and color coding because that's just how my mind thinks. I'll go into depth about how all this works and how I organize, but that's another episode. So once again, I wanted to thank you for choosing to spend your time on the adventure with me today. I am OverHugs, and this has been Building Bread. As a reminder, I donate all the profits I make off of this to local food banks. So if you'd enjoyed or otherwise gotten something of value out of this today, I'd really appreciate if you could like, subscribe, or tell a friend. Together, we can help people that are in need. I hope you have the most wonderful of days, and I'll see you soon.